Did you think recruiting stopped during the season? I hope not. And Dan Lanning and his staff know that it does not. So, Oregon with a big flip here. Douglas Utu, Bishop Gorman High School product, second offensive lineman they've taken from one of the best, maybe the best, probably definitely the best high school in the Las Vegas area, just 2.5 hours down the road from where I live. 6'4", 317 pounds. He's the number 2 interior offensive lineman, according to 24/7 Sports, in the country, and the number 69 player overall. Now, ESPN is even higher on Douglas Utu. 24/7's composite, which is what I tend to look at because it's a more encompassing metric, doesn't have him as a 5-star. He's just short of that. ESPN's got him as a 5-star and the number 13 player in the land. Regardless of what those rankings say, this is a talented guy and a really nice pickup. He was committed to Tennessee. Oregon has flipped him, and it's propelled the Ducks recruiting class back inside the top 10. So he was committed to the Vols. Bama was in the mix. Nebraska was in the mix. Michigan was in the mix. Those were the finalists when he chose Tennessee. Oregon's gotten the flip. Shout out to Alik Terry. And I know there have been plenty of questions that I've gotten here on the show about Oregon's offensive line and how it's going to project after the season, because they're going to lose a lot. Only guy from this year's team guaranteed, I think, to be back next year is Poncho. That's a lot of offensive line to replace. So this is a position group that I think Oregon has recruited well, not as well as the defensive line, but they have still done a good job. And there are still talented guys waiting in the wings. Guys like Bryce Bolton, or guys like Devin Brooks, or guys like Fox Crater or Shaq McCroy. There is another crop of offensive linemen, and Douglas Utu could be one of those guys. And his commitment on its own moved Oregon's class up to number 8 nationally, up 5 spots from where it was before. He is the 16th player of the class of 2025. According to 24/7's metrics, he's the 6th highest rated player that Oregon has in this class. Now, you can look around and say, oh, well, the composite's got it here, ESPN's got him there, On Three's here, Rivals is there. He's a big-time recruit. Something that I always look at when determining, what to expect from a recruit or how big of a victory it is. Who else wanted him? Nebraska, on the rise Big Ten program. Michigan, reigning national champs. Bama, don't think I need to say anything there. Tennessee looks really, really good. They've got a great program running over there in Knoxville, and Josh Heupel's a really good coach. This is a really, really good flip for the Ducks. I don't know if they're done with offensive linemen in the class of 25. They could be. They've got 4 of them right now. This might depend on 2 things: how they feel the transfer situation is going to work out, and also how prepared they feel other guys are. So if they think that, 2 of the 4 offensive linemen they've gotten this year, at least one of them is, because Alai Kalani-Uvalu, he's going on a 2-year mission, so he won't be around for a couple of seasons. The other offensive linemen are Dimitri Manning, a 3-star, and Zaire Addison, a 4-star offensive lineman. If they don't feel like those guys are all on the same timeline, then they could go get another offensive lineman. I think Kalani Uvalu taking his mission right after his upcoming, or ongoing, I should say, senior season, that could contribute to them adding another offensive lineman if they find a fit. But could you get by with 4? I think so. With the transfer portal and the availability of quality offensive linemen, a Johnny Cornelius, 2-year starter, transfer. Nishad Struthers going to start at left guard on Saturday, as he did against Oregon State. He was a transfer as well. And other guys, Marcus Harper was a grandfathered-in recruit. Poncho was a guy that they recruited and played as a true freshman. And Connerly was the first big recruiting win of the Dan Lanning era. So I think they've been pretty balanced along the offensive line with regards to transfers and high school players. But certainly they know internally what else they need. Like they have an understanding. Because I say that because I get questions from people all the time. Well, do you think they need this, or do you think they need that? I'm like, I'd rather react to what happens and let that determine my assessment rather than trying to guess whether the coaching staff knows what they're doing or how they want to operate here. And I think this says that they wanted at least one more offensive lineman. Obviously, I could see him going to get one more. I don't think they'd get more than one additional offensive lineman in the 2025 cycle, but this won't be the last recruit that commits to the Ducks in the 25 class during this 2024 season. Last year they had, I think, 5 or 6 was the exact number. I did not double check that before hopping on to record, so don't quote me on it, but it was in that sort of range. Guys like Aiden Breland and Ife Obadegwu committed during the season. So Oregon's up to 16 players. I bet they get close to 20, somewhere in that 18 to 20 range. But, you know, the impact of these guys is pretty profound. I mean, Utu moves them up. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, by the way. Apologies if I'm not. But Douglas Utu moves them up from 13th to 8th. And Oregon still doesn't have the volume of those top 5 classes, but certainly landing Douglas Utu puts them a lot more squarely in that fold to have a top 5 class for the second straight season. So great pickup for the Ducks offensively. He's listed as an interior offensive lineman, like I said, 6'4", 317. Might have to talk to Brian Smith about, you know, what his career prospects are, but regardless, as a recruit, highly regarded for a reason, and Bishop Gorman, big time high school football program. Another curious recruiting note. Oregon offered a 4-star quarterback in the 25 cycle, Jaron Kiwe Sagapolotele. I did my best with that pronunciation. I actually think I did all right. He's a 4-star left-handed quarterback who's currently a verbal commit to Cal. He's one of the top 25 quarterbacks, according to 24/7, in the country for this 2025 cycle. It caught me off guard. It caught me off guard a little bit. There was a quarterback that Oregon was looking at in kind of the June timeline, and I was discussing here on the show, like, would Oregon take a second quarterback? They could. There's no such thing really as too many, because if a guy transfers out and never plays, but, you know, serves as competition for other guys to push them to be the best version of themselves, it's not the worst thing in the world. I just saw the offer and was like, can't say I saw that one coming. I didn't, you know, check out his film or anything like that. He's not, you know, an incredibly highly coveted recruit, but he's a blue chip quarterback guy, and there are only so many of those in a given recruiting cycle. I'll let you all interpret for yourselves what it means that Oregon's got a quarterback committed with 4 already on the roster, right? You've got Gabriel, you've got Moore, you've got Novosad, you've got Moga, and then there's the walk-on Brock Thomas as well. But after this year, Gabriel's gone. You'll probably have a battle between Dante Moore and Austin Novosad. Luke Moga can try to get his name into the mix, but he's probably a guy that needs to sit for 2 or maybe even 3 seasons before he'd be prepared to start at quarterback for the Ducks. You're bringing in Achilles Smith Jr., so you're actually going to be at Moga, Novosad, Moore, Smith. That's 4. If you brought him in, he'd be 5. That's a lot. You know who's got 5 quarterbacks right now? Ohio State. I'll throw that out as you never know how these things are going to play out. So just thought I would note that, and I'll wrap up today's show. And I will be back for a pretty timely, thanks to the late kickoff, reaction show to the UCLA game on Saturday night. This question from Alexi. Always keep your questions coming. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. If you want priority access, go join the flock over at Subtext. That link in the description below. Wherever you listen to or watch the show, you can get a free 14-day trial. Alexi asks, hey Spencer, what are your thoughts on Georgia beating Kentucky by 1 point and only dropping by 1 rank, but the Ducks winning their games by 3 or more points and dropping from 3rd to 8th in the AP Top 25? Oregon was actually down to 9th after their first couple of games. They are back up to 8th heading into this game against UCLA. I don't think this is, though there are many illogical things with the AP Top 25 this week, like Washington State not being ranked and Texas A&M being ranked at all. I don't think this is one of the more illogical things. I understand where you're coming from, but Georgia went on the road to play a conference foe. Oregon fell because they played at home to 2 G5 FCS schools. Even if they're really good G5s or really good FCS schools, which Boise State and Idaho are, these two things are not the same. Competition level at home, I think, should be punished more in the views of the AP voters than going on the road and struggling to win a conference game. And it's not as if Georgia, didn't drop. They did. Texas overtook them for the number 1 spot. Perception matters more as the college football playoff rankings get closer and closer to being rolled out. But I pay attention to this stuff. I talked about it yesterday on the show. I think it matters. It's not defining Oregon's season necessarily. It could at some point come down to Oregon and another team for who gets a home playoff game versus who gets a road playoff game. Well, if that's the case, then yeah, suddenly that could matter quite a bit. But for now, I think Oregon just focus on UCLA. And if you're anywhere inside the top 10, that's where you want to be going into the Ohio State game. Win that. Win the rest of your games or don't lose more than one other one. Get to the Big Ten title game. And if you win that, you set yourself up for the bye no matter what. But appreciate the question. Keep them coming. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day and go Ducks.